Hi everybody, I am Jenny, and what I was planning on doing today for the video was to talk about paperwork that you're going to want to have for private practice. But then as I was looking at what I wanted to tell you, I realized that it would be helpful to actually show you a timeline of different things that you want to make sure to do before you even see your first client. And then when you first start to see a client, what are kind of those steps, all the way to helping your client to reach their goals and terminating. So I thought that that would be helpful to do a timeline before we get into the paperwork. So that's what we're going to do today. And then in subsequent videos, we'll go ahead and look more deeply at the different kind of paperwork that goes into different parts of the process within this whole timeline. We've talked in other videos about some of the things that you would want to do before seeing your first client, but today I'm just going to try to lay out as comprehensively as possible what those different steps look like, and then if you want details you can go back to the previous videos. And one reminder that I always like to give is just that I am trained as a therapist and as a clinical supervisor, but in this video, I'm just trying to be a helpful resource, and I'm not serving as a therapist or a supervisor for any of you. If you do find what I am sharing with you helpful, then I would just ask you to consider subscribing to the channel and maybe liking it and sharing it with other people, so people who maybe want this information can more easily get to it. So now we're just going to look at this timeline. We're going to start with a few of the things that I think you'd want to do before you see your first client. So the first one is just asking, is private practice even the right thing for me? And just trying to kind of get the lay of the land and making sure that it's something that you want to do. And then asking yourself some questions to help determine who are the clients that you actually want to work with. And maybe even more important than that, who are the ones that you really don't want to work with? So that'll help you kind of narrow things down. And then to ask yourself, kind of what's my identity as a therapist, which is going to be different from your role as a school counselor. So that's a good thing to take a look at. And there's something called a target exercise for both of those questions that I'll go over with you in another video. Then the next thing that you're going to want to do that also ties into all of this is just figuring out what modalities of treatment are you actually wanting to work with as a therapist. And I would say a lot of times when I first start working with supervisees who have been in schools, they often name CBT, brief solution focused kind of therapies as the modalities that they feel comfortable with. And that makes sense as school counselors, that those are the modalities that we tend to use. But as a therapist, you may want to do something really different than that. For me, I am using something called emotionally focused therapy and then also EMDR. So those are the main ones that I use. I'm also trained in dialectical behavior therapy, which I think translates more easily into school counseling. It's similar to CBT. But a lot of what I do is actually pretty different from what I was doing as a school counselor. And I just want you to know that you have those options open. You don't have to just do what you've done as a school counselor. You can branch out. For me, I found that these other modalities have been really, really helpful as a therapist working with the clients the way I am now. Now you're going to make sure you do all the business stuff, which I went over a lot of the details of this in previous videos. Things like getting an LLC, getting an employee identification number if you want one, making sure that you've got your business finances separated from your personal stuff, and making sure that you get malpractice insurance, things like that. The next thing that you're going to want to do is set up your office. And so that would include things like getting a confidential voicemail, email, and place to store your records that would be HIPAA compliant. And then also looking for a physical office if that's something that you want. I can tell you for me, having a physical office has gotten me filled up really quickly with clients because a lot of them are really looking for someone that they can meet with in person. And then kind of going along with that, deciding if you want to accept insurance, what kind of insurance you want to take, and then just going through the steps to be able to accept people's insurance if you want to do that, which again opens you up to a lot more clients, and it's easy to get filled up if you're willing to do that. And I will have videos on these things that I haven't covered yet that I'm pointing out here in the future, so we'll go into more detail on all of that, including this last one, which is marketing. So with marketing, you might want to set up something like a Psychology Today profile and or create your own professional website. So we'll get into those steps in more detail in a future video, but let's say you do all of these things. There may be other steps that I haven't covered here, but those are the kind of main ones that I was thinking of that you would want to do before seeing your first client. So then let's say, for me, I may have a client that finds my profile on Psychology Today, and then they ask for more information, or they want to see, what we can do to start working together. So I would start with a 15-minute phone consult. I would offer it to them. If they say, no, I don't want to do that, I just want to schedule, that's fine. Either way, if I do the 15-minute phone consult, or if we skip straight to the next step in the process, for me, and this doesn't have to be how everybody does it, but I like to ask folks to fill out some paperwork. And I explain it to them this way. I say, when you go to see a new primary care physician for the first time, you often are asked to fill out some screeners and answer some questions. So it's similar to that, what I'm asking you to do. And I look over all of that information really carefully. I'm looking to make sure that this is a client that fits with what I am able to work with and want to work with, and that I can provide them the services that they are needing. And then I also take some time to do some case conceptualization and just make sure that I have a draft of a treatment plan. So when they come in person, those things are already kind of gelled for me, and it just makes it easier for me to get started with them. When I can take a little time to myself, I'm more of an internal processor, and so I really need that time. So I ask folks to hold off on scheduling with me until they get the paperwork in and I have a chance to digest it. Usually I try to get that done within 1 or 2 business days after I get it. And so with the 15-minute consult, there's a few kind of points that I try to cover. I try to ask them some questions and give them particular information. And I will do a video in the future that goes over those details for the 15-minute consult. So for now, let's just say that we've gotten through the initial packet of paperwork. I call it the intake packet. And let's say that the person has filled all that out. I've had the opportunity to do my kind of behind the scenes looking at it. Then the next thing that we're going to do is set up a time for us to actually meet in person or over the computer to do our first visit. And the first visit is called the intake and assessment visit. So a big part of that is going to be informed consent. We'll go through some things verbally that were in the intake packet as far as informed consent goes. And then I will ask them some questions to help me just with building rapport and helping me get a better sense of their situation and kind of further conceptualize their case. And then we'll go over the treatment plan together and try to make sure that we're on the same page about what that's going to look like. And then in subsequent visits, we will go ahead and look at the treatment plan to help guide us for what we're going to do ongoing. With different modalities, what those ongoing sessions look like may look and feel a little different depending on the modality that you want to use. For example, for me, I do like to use emotionally focused therapy, or EFT. I do it for individuals, so it's called EFIT. And there are 3 stages in that type of therapy. So the first stage is really where you are stabilizing the client, you're building that relationship. That's kind of the foundation of everything else you're doing. You're getting to know them and the lay of the land, and you're looking at patterns within the client as far as kind of how their emotions cycle, and then also between that client and other people and how they relate to others and those patterns that are going on. And then we're also looking at their attachment needs, and kind of all of that goes into that case conceptualization, treatment planning, and helps to guide what we need to be focused on for ongoing sessions. And then after a while, we get to a place where trust is really built up. We have clarified these attachment needs and patterns, and we're ready to get into more of the second stage of EFT, which is really going to be where we help them to kind of change the way that they are looking at things and doing things. And so that's restructuring. And so we do that, and then when we get to a certain place where hopefully that is doing what we wanted it to do, and the client has reached their goals, and we are getting very stable and getting really to that place where it's looking like we could either scale down on sessions or we can terminate completely, then we'll start talking about it. And I try not to spring this on people. I try to give people time to kind of digest it. But eventually we get to that stage again in EFT. It's called consolidation. And that's where we're really kind of talking about all of the work that the client has done, the way that they've gotten to this place where now they've got this. It's skills that they've built up that they can take with them wherever they go. And we build their confidence, and we just get them to that place where they can kind of fly free and they don't need those training wheels of therapy anymore. And then we have our time at the very end where we can appreciate one another and celebrate the client and say goodbye. And it's a chance to actually have a healthy kind of closure, which a lot of us do not often get that opportunity. So the whole thing is meant to be in service of the client's mental health and well-being. But we get to that termination stage, and those are kind of where I see all the different steps along the way once you start working with a client all the way to the end. With each one of these steps, there's some different processes and paperwork that can go into it. And so we will keep talking in subsequent videos here about what each of those look like. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about the intake paperwork and what that looks like. So we'll spend some time on that, but I do plan to go back and touch on some of these other points and parts of the whole timeline that maybe come before the intake paperwork, so don't worry, I'll get to it. But I just think now you know the kind of lay of the land, and now we can talk about the actual paperwork and just kind of get a sense for what does that even look like. Then we can go and look more into some of the processes that also go into this. So we'll get to everything in due time, so you have everything that you need to be very successful in your private practice. And that's it for today. So if you found anything in this video useful, please do feel free to like, subscribe, and share it. And then if you do have anything that you want me to know about, feel free to put comments down below. And until next time, remember, you do have options and opportunities. I'll see you later.